So we're going to take it away, Dr. Anthony Montero.
It's good to see you, Professor.
It's good to see you, brother. Doing well, doing well.
Hold on, let me change the headphones.
It's all right. And the phone lines are lit up. People are looking to learn, and we're going to talk Du Bois this morning.
Yes, thank you. You know, last Saturday, I was in West Philadelphia. I spoke in an art gallery on 52nd Street. Really nice event. And I spoke about many things that are troubling in our community, including schools and police brutality and gentrification and such things. But then I focused what I was saying upon poverty. And I focused upon a segment of our community that kind of fall into that category that James Baldwin spoke about in his book of essays, Nobody Knows My Name. Those people who are invisible, but in fact are at the foundation of our community's present, and if we are to have a future, it's going to orient upon them. And those are the women and men who wake up at 4:30 in the morning to get to a job at 6 o'clock and make a wage that barely allows them to pay their rent, and often they and their children go hungry. And then I thought about an article that appeared in the Philadelphia Inquirer in September showing that of the top 10 cities and of the nation as a whole, Philadelphia stood out as one of the only cities, in fact, the only city where poverty has increased over the last 2 or 3 years. And not only has poverty increased, but extreme poverty and, in fact, childhood hunger. And I thought about the part of the black population, that part of the black working class, these heroes of the people who refuse to give up in spite of all obstacles and odds. And then I thought about the system that produces and reproduces that type of poverty. In other words, the people who live in poverty in Philadelphia didn't just get poor. Their poverty goes back generations. And I said, well, it probably goes back to enslavement. And I thought about the system that makes them poor. And I said, well, it's not that different than slavery. So I thought I'd read from Du Bois's book entitled Black Reconstruction, where he talks about the slave as a worker. And he says, it is just as true that Negro slaves in America represented the worst and lowest conditions among modern workers. They represented, in a very real sense, the ultimate degradation of man and woman. Indeed, the system was so reactionary, so utterly inconsistent with modern progress that we simply cannot grasp it today. No matter how degraded the white factory worker, he is not real estate. The tragedy of the black slave's position was precisely this: his absolute subjugation to the will of an owner, to the cruelty and injustice which are the invariable consequences of the exercise of irresponsible power, especially where authority must be sometimes delegated by the planters to agents of inferior education and coarse feelings. And then Du Bois continues. To be sure, the black masses developed again and again here and there capitalist groups in New Orleans, in Charleston, and in Philadelphia, groups willing to join white capital in exploiting labor. But they were driven back into the mass by racial oppression before they had reached a permanent foothold, and thus became all the more bitter against all organization which by means of race prejudice or the monopoly of wealth sought to exclude men and women from making a living. It was thus the black worker, as founding stone of a new economic system in the 19th century, and for the modern world, who brought Civil War in 1860 to 1865 in America. He was its underlying cause, in spite of every effort to base the strife upon the Union and national power. That dark and vast sea of human labor in China and India, the South Seas and all of Africa, in the West Indies and Central America and in the United States, that great majority of mankind whose bent and broken backs rest today the founding stones of modern industry, shares a common destiny. It is despised and rejected by race and color, paid a wage far below the level of decent living, driven, beaten, prisoned, and enslaved in all but name, spawning the world's raw material and luxury, cotton, wool, coffee, tea, cocoa, palm oil, fibers, spices, rubber, silks, lumber, copper, gold, diamonds, and leather. How shall we end the list and where? All these are gathered up at prices lowest of the low, manufactured, transformed, and transported at fabulous gain, and the resultant wealth is distributed and displayed and made the basis of world power and universal dominion of the white world, and armed arrogance in London and Paris, Berlin and Rome, New York and Rio de Janeiro. Here is the real modern labor problem. Here is the kernel of the problem of religion and democracy, of humanity. Words and futile gestures avail nothing. Out of the super exploitation of the dark proletariat comes a surplus value filched from human beasts, which in cultured lands the machine and harness power veil and conceal. The emancipation of man is the emancipation of labor, and the emancipation of labor is the freeing of that basic majority of workers who are yellow, brown, and African. Thank you.
The phone lines are lit up. If you're ready to start taking these calls,
Yes,
we got
I am.
Red Sox from North Philly calling up. Thank you, Red, for waking up with Word.
Thank you, Professor. Shout out to you and the doctor also.
Thank you.
Professor also. I would like for the professor to streamline, in layman's terms, what he's getting at with the Du Bois, the year of Du Bois. How do we move forward? Because a lot of people are not intelligent enough to understand the ways of American capitalistic system or the communist system, right? So could you streamline for a lay person or a young educated person, what actually, what are you doing with the year of Du Bois and looking back in the Du Bois era, what he projected into our future generations?
Yeah, thank you very, very much for that question. And you know, it is so important that these ideas be made understandable to everybody, including that woman and man that I was talking about who don't have time to read, who have to get up at 4:30 in the morning and catch 2 and 3 buses to get to a job that doesn't pay them enough to hardly pay their rent or feed their children. We have to make these ideas understandable to them, and that's what we've been trying to do in the year of Du Bois. I hope that by reading Du Bois on WURD for this almost a year now, that at least we have gotten his ideas before the people of Philadelphia. And you're right, Du Bois did not see a future for humanity in the existing system. In other words, and I think this is relevant for the time that we live in, that we are on the beginning, or at the beginning, of a new epoch of human history, where the old system that was built upon the backs of black labor, enslaved black labor, that system is coming to its end. And we have to be able to think about and imagine a future. And I'm not just talking about an elite of intellectuals, but the masses of people in conjunction with intellectuals and in conjunction with our understanding our great intellectual ancestors, people like Du Bois, people like Paul Robeson, people like James Baldwin. So that's what we've been trying to do. I hope we have been in some small way successful.
Yes. Again, with the ideas of Du Bois and the communist theory or the capitalist system, right? Can we learn more about it? Or because, like I said, people are paying lip service and not knowing the real decadence that capitalism has caused to the American system.
Yeah, you know, we have a Saturday free school every Saturday starting at 9:30 in the morning at the Church of the Advocate, and we try to probe some of these questions more deeply. These are profound questions, the question of capitalism versus socialism. But, you know, and like you're saying, these questions need to be discussed. I mean, when you look at this poverty, when you look at Philadelphia, it is a laboratory for an interrogation, an investigation of what a system based upon poverty and low wages, what it does. I mean, you got a gleaming downtown, you got these universities building new buildings and libraries and want to build football stadiums, and people are descending further and further into poverty. Now, what kind of system is that? And that's what Du Bois engaged at the end of his life. But that's what I would say about it. I thank you very, very much for your call.
Thank you, Red. We also have Brother Timothy from South Philly on the line. Brother Timothy, thank you for waking up with Word.
Yes, how are you, Dr. Aaron Smith? How are you, sir?
Doing great. How you doing?
Good. And Dr. Montero, I missed you last week because you had a conversation about Lincoln University.
Yeah.
Right now, you know, and I guess I kind of want to talk about the subject now. And I want to say that in some of the black folks, what Du Bois did mention for David Walker. I want to take us to that part where David Walker, in Shadow Slavery, was able to produce a piece of writing that's phenomenal today. And we go from David Walker to Frederick Douglass to Du Bois. And after, during post-slavery, we have to say that here comes Du Bois is on his way. You have other scholars during that time period, and we survived.
Right.
And I'm going to say after that, if you look at it, Dr. Montero, you have to look at that time we had the 60s, we had Malcolm, Noble, Drew Ali, and we had Elijah Muhammad.
Right.
And from that time period, we had the Roaring 60s, we produced afterwards, we had the Civil Rights era, we came up with Coleman Young, came up with Maynard Jackson, and Kenneth Gibson. So I said, if we had a timeline of those people and the people who followed them and the people who are not talked about, and we made it, I think we're going to make it this time. It's coming about with the pattern, the antidote, and looking at the past to tell us about the future. Now, there's socialism and communism is another subject with me and you, and also with nationalism. There's never enough time, Dr. Montero. I need to give you an hour, really.
Yeah.
But,
you know, Tim,
talk about that.
You know, Tim, this is very, the way you put these things in a chronology and a timeline is very, very important. I would put in that timeline the great socialist and anarchist, black socialist and anarchist Lucy Parsons, that we talk too little about. Ida B. Wells Barnett, of course, the great fighter against white terror in the South. I would include among the people that you mentioned, Assata Shakur, Angela Davis, and of course many, many more. But each of them, as you suggested, are representatives of the time in which they lived. And the reason we remember them and refer back to them is because they so accurately represented the aspirations of the least of us in their time. I recall Angela Davis very, very well. I was a part of the movement for her freedom, and it was one of the great movements for a political prisoner in our time. And the reason it captured our people was because what Angela stood for represented what our people were aspiring to. So, yeah, I would agree with the way you put things. And I think we have to keep that history, that genealogy in mind whenever we talk about these great ideas and these great thinkers.
Dr. Montero, we're going to take a time out to talk about Lincoln University because Lincoln University that I came from is different from the Lincoln University of today. It was different from when you came.
Yes, definitely.
And I'll tell you, Dr. Montero, they're doing very well. Their standards are high. They're not accepting anybody with just an average GPA or SAT score. And it's to be talked about because it's different. And I need to give a spin on what's going on and what the people became after they graduated from Lincoln.
And you know something? You know something, Tim, and then I'm going to let another caller come in. But a friend of mine, a very, very brilliant young woman who is adjuncting as an adjunct professor at Lincoln, is doing something that was not done when I was at Lincoln, although Lincoln was very great then. She is teaching Du Bois's World and Africa, and she's teaching it to freshmen as part of a literature course. So yeah, I think Lincoln is making some progress. I hope it is the progress based upon that radical, progressive thinking that defined Lincoln when I was there.
We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back with more on the phones and the year of Du Bois. I'm Aaron Smith, the rapping professor. Young JB on the boards. Queen Kawesa is away in the palace. Salute to the queen. You are waking up with word, y'all.
This is Dr. Karen Nichols, Chief Medical Officer for Keystone VIP Choice. Keystone VIP Choice wants you to know that because we are living longer, we're more likely to suffer from age-related memory loss. For many seniors, dementia is the worst fear of old age. Dementia and its symptoms can be caused by any number of conditions, so obtaining an accurate diagnosis is critical for management and treatment. The sooner you address the problem, the better. So make an appointment with your doctor right away. Your doctor can assess your personal risk factors, offer tips on healthy lifestyle adjustments, and help you obtain appropriate care. Keystone VIP Choice is committed to helping our friends and neighbors get the care they need with the dignity and service they deserve, and believes nothing is more important than the health of our seniors and their families.
For more information about Keystone VIP Choice and how we can help you get extra benefits, please give us a call at 1-877-690-0694.
Don't miss the Mount Calvary Church of God in Christ annual worship weekend, Friday, October 5th through Sunday, October 7th. Featured speaker on Friday is Apostle Arnita DeShields. Saturday workshop presenters are Pastors Mark and Stephanie Stevens and Pastor Tawana Butler. And speaker on Sunday is Evangelist Sean Larimore. Everyone is invited. Mount Calvary Church of God in Christ is located at 106 North 7th Street in Camden, New Jersey. For more information, call 609-220-8717.
A Black Education Network is unapologetically focused on Black people. Visit ABBINForACE.org to learn more about ABBIN's work and how you can join ABBIN in the righteous struggle. If not ABBIN, who?
You're listening to Wake Up with Word on Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, independent Black media.
900 AM, 96.1 FM, WURD, WURDradio.com. Listen anytime, live and log on. If you don't have that app, you know where to go. Download an app like you know on the road to the Celebrate Day, and the day is October 6th. October 6th is going to be amazing. We are going to be at the Kimmel Center for the Performing Arts, and you can get the access to the after party, but you can still be part of the panel discussion. Please visit kimmelcenter.org. Once again, kimmelcenter.org. So the party sold out, but the discussion is not, and we have DeRay McKesson, also commentator, activist, Uncle Bobby's businessman extraordinaire, Mark Lamont Hill, moderated by Sarah Lomax Reese, president and CEO of WRD, and last minute audible, Professor Laureen Carey is going to be also on that panel. So make sure you can still get your access and get your tickets at the kimmelcenter.org location. So log on today. And we are in the middle of the year in Du Bois. Sandra from Oak Lane, thank you for waking up with Word.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
And Dr. Montero. I want to just briefly touch on the food injustice piece. And according to the Organic Consumers Association, Whole Foods and Trader Joe's are throwing out millions of pounds of edible food. They haven't made any commitment to stop throwing away the food or to donate the food to communities or food banks. Now, they continue to throw away this food all while homeless, veterans, students, elderly, children, and the unemployed go hungry. This also affects the taxpayers and the environment. So I'd like to know what, if anything, we could do during the year of the Bois to address this with these two companies.
Right. Well, this is a problem that is rooted in the system that we live in. In other words, hunger comes with the system, and the throwing away of food is part of keeping the price of food up. The idea that if you fed everybody, the price of food would go down, and hence the profits made by Whole Foods and Trader Joe's and other people would also go down. And since this is a system based on profit, people have to suffer in order that people like Bezos, the richest man in history, can make billions and billions and more billions. Now, what can we do? Of course, we can demand that Whole Foods and Trader Joe's and other chain stores give the food to people who would redistribute it among the masses, or that they themselves set up mechanisms for that. We can also talk about the development of consumer cooperatives, or even cooperatives that would distribute this surplus food among the hungry. The other thing is the development of cooperative community gardens, where people seize these abandoned lots, even in areas that are being gentrified, to produce food to feed people. But ultimately, I think, Sandra, we're going to have to think about and imagine a change of the social and economic system that we live under. If we do not, we can expect more misery, more hunger, in fact, more war, more spending on war, and as Dr. Martin Luther King said, war is the enemy of the poor. That's the way I would begin to think about and talk about the problem of hunger, which is basically a fundamental problem in the economic system in which we live.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Still got time to call in here in Du Bois, 215-634-8065. Again, that's 215-634-8065. Is that Sandra still on hold, or somebody else is calling up? Oh, okay. Make sure that you call in, and I know that y'all are trying to tailor your comments to the Du Bois topic, but, we would wish that you would call asking about the reading and asking about Du Bois. Any other commentary you want to give as we get these other callers, Dr. Montero?
Yeah, of course. There's a lot to talk about. I think one of the first callers asked about, well, how do we make all of this intellectual discussion available to ordinary people? What is the language of the people? And, part of this year of Du Bois and the reading of Du Bois, we're trying to enhance the language of the people to create a new narrative among the people, a new consciousness among the people. And that's why, for example, I began talking about the event out in West Philadelphia this past Saturday, where we were trying to think through what is to be done. What do black people do at this time in a city where you got literally a tale of two cities, a city that is gleaming downtown and around its universities, but then in the shadows of all of this, poverty. And frankly, the people that make the whole thing work are the poor, are the working class, are those who can barely sometimes pay their rent or feed their children. So, of course, the Du Bois's body of work takes on these questions, and it might explain why near the end of his life, the government targeted him as an enemy and made it appear that he was an agent of a foreign government, because his ideas went against the interest of what we today call the 1%, the super rich.
All right, last caller for the day, Rebecca from West Philly. Thank you for waking up with Word.
Good morning, and thank you for taking my call.
Good morning.
Yes, I'd like to thank Dr. Montero for his contribution to Word. And you mentioned Lincoln University. I know listening to the radio 25, 30 years ago, there was a lot of discussion going on about the Barnes collection. He left that to Lincoln University. Right. How did the Philadelphia finally get that collection here in Philadelphia?
Well, Rebecca, I don't know whether you're familiar with the documentary called The Art of the Steal, which is about how the elite in Philadelphia stole the Barnes collection from Lincoln University. And as you know, Mr. Barnes himself, in his will, said he never wanted the establishment, really the white establishment of Philadelphia, to get control of his art collection. And now they have it. And I think, for me, that's one of the saddest moments in the history of Lincoln University, the loss of that great collection, which is probably the greatest private collection of Western and African art in the world.
I often wondered how they got it, because I know back there was a lot of discussion back and forth about taking it from Lincoln University. I hope Lincoln got something out of it.
Yeah, I hope so, too. I don't exactly know, but I would hope so.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'd like to thank everybody for taking part in this program this morning. All my people from Tribe Clothing, from Bank of America, Baron Holland and Chief Green, and we got the year in Du Bois, Dr. Anthony Montero, and all the listeners and callers, and even Eric, shouting out Trump 2020. They know you now, trying to help you get your stock up, get your wave up, because he wants the people to know him. So everybody say hi to Eric. And hopefully he'll call tomorrow and let us know what his predictions are for the next presidential race. So otherwise, it's going to be a lovely day. Thank you to everybody who came out this weekend. We had the All Black National Convention with Bois Watkins. Everybody came to Canaan.